I just wanted a weekend with my grandsons. That was all. But my son-in-law looked me dead in the eye and said, "You want to see them? Pay $2,500. I didn't argue. I didn't even raise my voice. I just smiled, walked to my desk, and handed him an envelope. He tore it open expecting money. What he found inside turned his arrogance into panic. And in that moment, I knew the balance of power had shifted forever. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and tell me in the comments, tell me which you are from. What would you do if your own son-in-law demanded you pay to see your grandchildren? I wanted nothing more than to spend a quiet weekend with my grandsons. Just a few hours of fishing and laughter like we used to have before everything went wrong. When my son-in-law Ryan told me I would have to pay $2,500 for that privilege, I thought he was joking. But his eyes did not blink, his voice stayed flat, and there was no hint of humor anywhere in his tone. He looked at me like a man presenting a contract. I did not argue. I simply smiled, reached for an envelope that had been sitting beside my coffee mug, and handed it to him. He tore it open, expecting money. What he found instead wiped the color from his face and replaced it with something close to fear. That was the moment everything shifted. Before we continue, make sure you are subscribed and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if your own son-in-law demanded you pay him to see your grandchildren? That morning had begun peacefully. The Florida sun filtered through the blinds, my coffee was hot, and the rustle of the newspaper was the only sound in the house. I was halfway through the sports section when the low growl of a BMW engine pulled into my driveway. The sound was smooth and expensive, the kind of engine note that spoke more of ego than practicality. I set my mug down and waited. Ryan did not knock. He never did. The front door opened, and he stepped inside with that familiar grin he used when he wanted something. "Frank," he said, as if we were old friends catching up. "Good to see you at home." He settled into the armchair across from me without waiting for an invitation, spreading his arms wide and smiling like he owned the place. It was the same look he had worn 2 years earlier when he had first asked for help. Back then it had been a consulting project, an opportunity as he called it, and I had loaned him $3,500 to get started. After that came a cryptocurrency idea that cost me another $4,500. Then there was a marketing venture that took another $5,500. Every time, it was the same pitch. Temporary. Just until the next big deal came through. I had kept track of every cent. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, pretending to share something confidential. "There is this investment coming up," he said, lowering his voice as if it were a secret. "A real estate syndication in Tampa. Ground floor. My partner needs commitments by Monday, and I am short $5,500. It is a one-time chance." I took a sip of my coffee. It had gone cold. "What happened to the other opportunities?" I asked him evenly. His expression flickered. "What do you mean?" I met his eyes. The consulting gig in early 2023, the crypto project in July, the marketing idea last spring. That is $13,500 in total. You have not repaid a cent. The fake confidence drained from his face. His smile tightened and his tone hardened. "Those were investments, not loans," he said. "You know how business works. There is always risk." 2 years is a long time, I said calmly. And the answer is no. He shot up from the chair as if I had insulted him. The move was meant to intimidate, but I had seen real danger in my life, and Ryan Morrison was not it. He began pacing, waving one hand in the air as he spoke. "You spent 3 decades running into fires, Frank. What do you really know about money in this world? Look around you. Same house, same furniture, same routines. You are stuck in the past. Meanwhile, Laura and I are building a future for Ethan and Ben. You should be proud to help. Ancient history is $13,500 I will never see again, I said quietly. His jaw clenched. He moved closer, standing over me. Let me tell you something. You think watching the news makes you understand business. You do not. This is happening with or without you. I am offering you a chance to be part of your family's success. I am already part of it, I said, my hands tightening around the chair arms. I am Laura's father and those boys' grandfather. He tilted his head, looking at me like I was a problem to solve. Are you? Because right now it looks like you are choosing money over your own family. The words hung in the air like smoke from an old fire. I took a breath, steady and slow. The answer is still no. He laughed once, but it was sharp and empty. Fine. Do not be surprised when you stop hearing from Laura or seeing the boys. That will be your choice, Frank. Think about it. Then he left, closing the door firmly behind him. Through the window, I watched him walk down the driveway, slip into his car, and pull away without looking back. The house fell silent again. My coffee sat cold beside the folded newspaper, but nothing felt the same. I turned toward the mantel where the last family photo still stood. Laura smiling, Ethan and Ben grinning with missing teeth. Ryan standing slightly apart, his smile never quite touching his eyes. That was Christmas, just over a year ago. I had paid off their mortgage by then. $74,000 over 3 years, because Laura had called me crying, saying they were about to lose the house. I had told myself it was worth it. Family was worth it. After that came the smaller requests, the investments, the emergencies. I had convinced myself it was all temporary. Sitting there now, I knew better. I had not been helping my daughter. I had been feeding a man's greed. That night, I tried to call Laura. The first call went to voicemail. The second rang 4 times. On the third, she answered, her voice small and frightened. Dad, I cannot talk, she whispered. Laura, what is going on? I asked. Is Ryan there? There was a pause. Then, I have to go. The line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then set it down and looked around the quiet living room. The walls felt closer somehow. Something had hardened inside me. Not anger exactly, but something sharper, colder, and far more certain. By morning, my decision was made. The drive to their house on Maple Ridge took 15 minutes. Their home looked exactly as it always did. The brick, the white trim, the landscaping I had helped Ryan with 2 summers earlier. I knocked once. He opened the door, expression blank. Frank, he said. Not a good time. The boys have plans. Through the doorway, I could see them. Ethan and Ben on the living room floor, surrounded by blocks and laughter. Laura moving quietly in the background. I just want to say hello, I said. 5 minutes. Ryan blocked the doorway with his body. Not today, he said. From behind his legs, Ethan spotted me. Grandpa, he shouted, running forward. Ben followed, smaller but quicker, both of them pure excitement and trust. They collided into Ryan's legs, trying to squeeze past. Ryan caught Ethan by the shoulder, but Ben slipped through, launching himself straight into my arms. I lifted him easily, his small arms wrapping around my neck. Grandpa, we made a fort yesterday, he said proudly, and I lost another tooth. He grinned, showing me the gap. Before I could answer, Ryan's voice cut through the air like a blade. Boys, inside, now. Ethan hesitated, but Grandpa just got here. Now, Ryan repeated, his hand tightening. I set Ben down gently. It is all right, buddy. Go on. Both boys walked back slowly, their smiles fading into confusion. Laura appeared in the hallway. She looked thinner, her shoulders hunched, her eyes tired. She mouthed something I could not make out. Maybe sorry, maybe help. I could not tell. Ryan leaned against the doorframe, smirking. Here is how this works, Frank. If you want time with Ethan and Ben, the rate is $2,500 per weekend. Cash. That is what my time is worth. I stared at him. You cannot be serious. Oh, I am, he said with that same hollow confidence. Otherwise, we are too busy. Schedules are full. You understand? I looked past him at Laura. She would not meet my eyes. I see, I said, keeping my voice calm. Good talk, Ryan said, and closed the door. The deadbolt slid into place. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the brass numbers I had nailed to that house myself. Then I turned, walked to my truck, and sat in silence. Through the window, I could see the boys inside. Ryan said something to Laura. She nodded without looking at him. The drive home was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy. When I got there, I walked straight to my bedroom, opened the safe, and pulled out a folder labeled Maple Ridge Property. Inside were every mortgage statement, every check copy, and the official deed. My name was on that deed, not Ryan's, not Laura's, mine. The notary who had handled the transaction, a man named Mr. Landry, had insisted we structure it as a secured loan. He said it would protect everyone. I had not realized until that moment how right he had been. Ryan thought that house was his. It was not. I closed the folder and set it on the kitchen table. For a long time, I just stared at it, my reflection faint in the glossy surface. This was not anger anymore. This was clarity, and I knew exactly what I was going to do next. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the Maple Ridge folder open in front of me. Every page told a story, though I had not realized it at the time. There were mortgage statements, payment records, correspondence from the bank, and my handwritten notes in the margins. The final payoff letter, dated 18 months ago, lay on top. I ran my hand over the embossed seal and thought about the night Laura had first called me crying. It had been almost 3 years earlier. I could still hear her voice, as if she were standing beside me. Dad, we are going to lose the house, she had said through tears. The bank sent the final notice, $70,400. We have 30 days, and we do not know what to do. Behind her voice, I could hear one of the boys crying, probably Ben. He would have been 4 at the time, too young to understand, but old enough to feel the fear in his mother's voice. I had looked down at the paper in front of me that night, my retirement statement showing $74,000 in savings accumulated over 3 decades of firefighting. Nearly everything I had. How much do you need? I had asked. There was silence, then she whispered, all of it. The full payoff. I know it is everything you have, but I will take care of it. The next morning, I had gone to the bank. The branch manager, Patricia, who had handled my accounts for years, looked at the withdrawal slip and hesitated. Mr. Delgado, this is nearly your entire savings. Are you certain? I had nodded. It is for my daughter and grandsons. She processed the paperwork without another word, but her expression said enough. The check had felt heavier than it should, all those zeros on one sheet of paper. From there, I drove to a small notary office in a strip mall on Dale-Mowbray Highway, wedged between a tax service and a nail salon. The man behind the desk was older, methodical, wearing glasses on a chain. His nameplate read, Arthur Landry, Notary Public. He spread the mortgage documents across his desk and looked at me with calm precision. "Mr. Delgado," he said, "you have two ways to handle this transaction. You can make it a gift or a secured loan." I remember frowning. What is the difference? A gift is final. You are transferring wealth without expectation of repayment. A loan protects your interest. If they default, you have recourse. It is not about trust, it is about clarity. Families fight over less than this. The thought of formal paperwork between me and my daughter felt wrong. It felt cold. I hesitated, but Mr. Landry had a calm authority about him. "This is not about mistrust," he continued. "This protects everyone involved. If all goes well, you will never need these papers. But if things do not, you will be glad they exist." I had taken a long breath and said, "Make it a loan." He nodded once, and for the next hour, he explained every clause while I signed in a dozen places. When we were done, he handed me copies. "Keep these somewhere safe," he said, "and make sure the loan is filed with the county clerk. That secures your lien against the property." I followed his advice to the letter. The loan was filed with the Hillsborough County Clerk that same week. I did not think much about it again. I just wanted my daughter and her family to have a home. That night, after I had paid the bank, Ryan had shown up at my door. He stood on the porch with a wide grin, extending his hand like a man closing a business deal. "Frank, I cannot thank you enough," he said. "This mistake will not define me. I will pay you back every cent." But his eyes did not meet mine. They drifted past me, toward the street, toward anything but contact. I had noticed it, but I wanted to believe him. "Just take care of Laura and the boys," I had told him. "Absolutely," he said quickly. "You will see, I have new opportunities coming up. Real estate, maybe some consulting." I should have seen it then. The lies were already forming. Now, sitting at my kitchen table nearly 3 years later, I looked at those same documents with new eyes. Every payment I had made, every cent I had given him, was recorded. My handwriting, precise and deliberate, told the whole truth in black ink. January 2022 through June 2023, $74,000. Add the so-called business loans after that, $13,500 more. A total of $87,500. I wrote it neatly on a clean page of my notebook. Then, below that, I wrote one more line. March 2025. $2,500 demanded per weekend for access to grandchildren. I stared at the words for a long time, the pen still in my hand. The pattern was undeniable. What had started as help had turned into exploitation, and finally, into extortion. I picked up the deed, reading it carefully, for the first time in years. The notary seal pressed deep into the paper caught the light. The clause was clear. In the event of default, the lender maintains primary ownership and legal right of reclamation. I realized what that meant. The house was still mine. I had never gifted it. I had legally loaned the funds to pay for it. Ryan had never made a single payment. The house I had given them to save them was now my leverage to save my grandsons. The next morning, I drove to the county records office in downtown Tampa. The building was quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint whir of ceiling fans. The clerk behind the counter looked up politely. "Can I help you?" she asked. I handed her my paperwork. "I need to confirm a lien filed under the name Delgado, Frank, Maple Ridge Drive property." She typed quickly, eyes scanning the screen. "Yes, sir. Recorded April 2022. Everything looks valid and current." I thanked her and walked back to my truck, feeling something solid for the first time in weeks. Proof. For the next few days, I kept my normal routine. Coffee at 6, newspaper by 7, lunch at noon. But the Maple Ridge document stayed on the table, visible and waiting. I spent evenings reading property statutes and legal cases on my laptop, learning terms I had never needed before. Subordinate interest, foreclosure notice, property recovery. I took notes like I was studying for an exam. It became my mission. By the end of that week, I knew what my next move was. I opened my laptop and searched for real estate attorneys in Tampa who specialized in property recovery. Names filled the screen. Some looked flashy, others forgettable. Then I saw one firm whose reviews all mentioned words like methodical, calm, and experienced. The name was Buchanan and Associates. I stared at their number for a long time, then picked up the phone. A woman answered with professional politeness. Buchanan Associates, how may I assist you? I need to speak with an attorney about a secured property loan in default, I said, my voice steady. My name is Frank Delgado. One moment, Mr. Delgado, she said. I will connect you to our senior associate. As the line clicked and soft instrumental music filled my ear, I looked at the document spread out across my table. Each page represented years of misplaced trust and quiet patience. I had spent my life protecting people from flames. It felt strange now, realizing the fire had started inside my own family. The music stopped, and a calm male voice came through the line. Mr. Delgado, this is Mark Bennett. I understand you have a property matter you need help with. Tell me what is going on. I looked again at the words I had written in my notebook. March 2025. $2,500 demanded per weekend for access to grandchildren. My jaw tightened as I spoke. Mr. Bennett, I believe it is time to take back my house. The line went silent for a brief moment, only the faint hum of office noise in the background. Then the attorney's voice returned, calm and measured. I understand, Mr. Delgado. Why don't you come in so we can look at the documents together? I have an opening tomorrow morning at 9. Will that work? It will, I said. The next day, I drove into downtown Tampa under a sky that looked like polished steel. The Buchanan and Associates office was on the 11th floor of a glass building that reflected the city skyline. Inside, everything was clean lines and quiet efficiency. The receptionist greeted me with a professional smile and offered coffee while I waited. Within a few minutes, a tall man in a dark blue suit appeared. Mr. Delgado? He said, extending his hand. Mark Bennett. His handshake was firm, the kind of grip that told me he was steady and deliberate. He led me into his office, a space lined with neat shelves of law books and framed diplomas. Please, have a seat, he said, gesturing toward the chair opposite his desk. I handed him the folder I had brought, the same Maple Ridge file that had sat on my kitchen table for a week. He opened it carefully, flipping through the documents with quick but precise movements. You have every record, he said approvingly. Mortgage statements, payoff receipts, notary documentation, and the filed lien. I have been keeping track, I said. He nodded. Good. That makes this easier. He paused to read one of the documents, his brow tightening slightly. So, your daughter and son-in-law have made no payments since this was recorded? None, I said. And now he is demanding money from me to see my grandchildren. He calls it a consultation fee, $2,500 per weekend. Bennett looked up sharply. That is extortion. You are doing the right thing by acting now. He pulled a yellow legal pad toward him. Let's start by confirming the structure of the original transaction. This was filed as a secured loan with the county, correct? Yes. The notary made sure of it. Good. That means you hold the legal title until the loan is satisfied. Since there have been no repayments, the property is still legally yours. You are not evicting tenants, Mr. Delgado. You are reclaiming your own asset. He turned his monitor slightly toward me, pulling up public property records. My name appeared on the screen in clear black text. Here it is. Filed April 2022. Lion holder, Frank Delgado, ownership interest, primary. He leaned back in his chair. That is as clean as it gets. Your case is extremely strong. What happens next? I asked. We begin by serving a formal notice to vacate, he said. Under Florida property law, the borrower in default has 30 days to settle the debt or surrender the property. Since you have full documentation and they have made 0 payments, the court will recognize the default immediately. After that period, we can file for repossession through the county court. It is a straightforward process, though family cases can get emotional. He hesitated for a moment, studying me. Are you ready for that possibility? I looked down at the table. I have been ready since the day he told me to pay to see my grandsons. Bennett gave a single nod. Then we will proceed carefully. You will not speak to him directly again. Let all communication go through my office. I will prepare the notice, and we can have it delivered by the end of the week. He opened a drawer, retrieved a contract, and slid it across the desk. Standard engagement terms. My retainer is $4,000. That covers the notice, filing, and all initial hearings. If this goes to trial, we will discuss additional fees. But I doubt it will. I read through the contract carefully, then signed my name at the bottom. The pen felt heavier than I expected. When I handed the document back, he smiled faintly. You made a smart decision, Mr. Delgado. This case is not about revenge. It is about restoring what is yours. I am not after revenge, I said quietly. I am after peace. He gathered the papers back into the folder. Then let me handle the law so you can focus on that. When I left his office, the late morning sun had broken through the clouds. The city felt louder, busier, but I walked slowly, thinking about how strange it felt to be on this side of the line. I had spent my entire life running toward danger, solving problems with my hands and instinct. Now everything depended on paper, signatures, and quiet patience. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table again, the folder in front of me, the retainer receipt on top. The legal process had begun. For the first time in months, I felt something close to control. The following days moved in deliberate rhythm. Bennett's assistant called to confirm the filing of the notice to vacate. A courier delivered a copy to my door, neatly printed and stamped with the firm's letterhead. The language was cold, professional, and final. Notice to vacate. Property in default. Borrower has 30 days to surrender possession or face legal reclamation proceedings. I read it twice. It did not feel real yet, but it would. A week later, Bennett called. Delivery confirmed, he said. Your son-in-law accepted the notice in person. Accepted it? I asked. Yes, sir. He took the envelope, looked at the courier, and said, Tell Frank this is a mistake. Then he slammed the door. I could almost see it in my mind. Ryan standing there in his designer shirt, trying to hide his fear under arrogance. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait 30 days. If he files a counterclaim, we will respond. If he does nothing, the court will process the repossession automatically. Either way, this will move quickly. The waiting began, The house felt both silent and alive during those weeks, as if every creak of the floorboards was marking time until the next move. I kept up my routine, but I slept less. Some nights I caught myself staring at the photo on the mantel again, the same one with the forced smiles. I wondered what Laura was thinking. I wondered if she knew what her husband had done, or if she was still under his thumb, believing his version of the story. On the 27th day, I received a new envelope in my mailbox. It was from the Superior Court of Hillsborough County. Inside was a counterclaim from Ryan Morrison, alleging that the $74,000 had been a gift, not a loan. He claimed there was no expectation of repayment, and that I was acting maliciously to take away his family's home. The words were legal, formal, and completely false. I read them twice, my pulse steady. Then I placed the papers on the table and called Bennett. He answered on the second ring. "I was expecting this," he said. "Do not worry. His claim is weak. The notarized loan agreement and filed lien make his argument irrelevant. I will draft our response today and submit it tomorrow morning." "Will I have to see him in court?" I asked. "Possibly, but it will be quick. The evidence is all on your side. Judges do not like when people lie on official filings. This could end faster than you think." After we hung up, I stood at the kitchen window for a long time, watching the sunlight shift across the street. I could see Mrs. Carter, my elderly neighbor, tending to her garden with slow, careful movements. She had once told me that patience was not about waiting quietly, but about knowing something good was still coming. I thought about that as I poured a cup of coffee and sat back down at the table. The envelope with the court seal sat there beside the folder. One piece of paper had started this mess, and another would end it. 30 years in the fire department had taught me to stay calm until the smoke cleared. This time, the fire was legal and personal, but the rule was the same. Control the flame. Wait for the right moment. Then move. That moment was coming. It arrived sooner than I expected. 3 days after Bennett filed our court response, my phone began ringing before sunrise. The first call came at 6:15 a.m., the second a minute later. Both from the same number. "Ryan," I let them ring out. On the third attempt, he left a voicemail. I did not need to listen to it to know the tone. The fourth call came at 7:02 a.m., then the fifth at 7:10. Finally, I picked up. "What do you think you are doing?" His voice hit my ear before I could even speak. "You think you can just take our home because you are mad? You cannot win this, Frank. The house was a gift. Everyone knows that." I kept my tone calm. "Then the court will decide." "You think some judge is going to take my kids home because of your pride?" He snapped. "That is all this is. You trying to prove you are still in charge." I took a slow breath. "No, Ryan. This is about what is right. You have had 3 years to prove you could be responsible. Instead, you used my daughter, my grandsons, and my money to fund your lies. That ends now." He went quiet for half a second, then hissed, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The line went dead. I set the phone on the table and stared at it until it stopped vibrating. It did not matter what threats he threw at me. The process had started, and it would end the way it should. 2 days later, I drove to the courthouse to deliver additional paperwork Bennett had prepared. On the way out, I saw them. Laura and Ryan walking toward the parking lot. She was holding Ben's hand while Ethan trailed behind with his backpack. They did not see me at first. When they did, Laura froze. Ryan noticed and pulled her along by the arm, pretending not to see me, but his jaw was tight, his shoulders squared. The boys waved before he could stop them. I waved back and smiled, pretending everything was normal, though inside I felt the ache of distance that words cannot cover. That evening, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun drop behind the trees. The phone rang again, this time from Laura. I answered immediately. "Dad, what are you doing?" Her voice was shaky, on the edge of tears. "Ryan told me you are trying to take the house. Please stop this. You are tearing us apart." I took a breath. "Sweetheart, listen to me. I am not trying to take your home. I am taking back what is legally mine. That house was never gifted. It was a loan, notarized and filed. Ryan knew that. He signed those papers. He said he did not understand what he was signing. He said you tricked him." I closed my eyes. "Laura, I went to that notary with you. You were there. Mr. Landry explained every line. You both nodded and signed. Do you remember?" Her voice cracked. "I remember, but I thought it was just a formality. You never said you would take it back." "Because I never thought I would have to," I said quietly. "I thought he would do the right thing. But he made you believe I am the enemy. He has cut me off from my grandsons, demanded money for visits, and turned my help into a weapon. I cannot ignore that." For a moment, all I heard was her breathing. Then she said, barely above a whisper, "The boys miss you. Ethan asks about fishing every weekend." "I miss them too," I said, my throat tightening. "And this, all of this, is for them. One day you will understand that." "I do not know what to do," she said. "Just stay safe," I replied. "That is all you need to do right now." When she hung up, I sat there in the dark until the porch light flickered on automatically. The sound of crickets filled the quiet, steady and familiar. I thought about how easily family can be bent by one person's manipulation, how guilt can be twisted into silence. But silence was something I could not afford anymore. The following week, Bennett called with the court date. "May 27th, he said. "The judge has accepted our filing. It will be a preliminary hearing to validate ownership and enforce the eviction order if necessary. We have everything in place. This should be straightforward." "Do I need to testify?" I asked. "Possibly. The judge may ask you a few questions, but your documentation will speak louder than anything you say. Just answer directly if asked. I will handle the rest." After we ended the call, I went to the mantel again. The Christmas photo was still there. I picked it up and looked closely at Laura's face. She looked younger, softer, and unburdened in that moment. The boys were both missing teeth, their smiles wide and unguarded. Ryan stood slightly off-center, his grin sharp and practiced. I stared at that photo until I realized my hands were shaking slightly. I set it back down. Days passed, slow but heavy. On Friday afternoon, while trimming the front hedge, I saw Mrs. Carter walking toward me with her cane. She paused at the gate. "Frank," she said, "I heard there's trouble over at your daughter's place." "There is," I admitted. "Family and money never mix well." She nodded knowingly. I have lived long enough to see that truth more than once. You are doing what you have to. Do not let guilt talk you out of it. I smiled faintly. You always did see things clearly. "I have time to watch," she said, tapping her cane on the walkway before continuing on. That weekend was quiet until Sunday evening when there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Ryan standing there. His hair was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot, and his expression full of rage barely held back. He stepped inside without invitation. "You think you can humiliate me like this? You think a court is going to take my side away from my family because you wave a piece of paper?" I stood my ground, my tone calm but firm. You should not be here, Ryan. Anything you have to say can go through my lawyer. He stepped closer, the smell of alcohol faint on his breath. You are destroying Laura. Do you even know what this is doing to her? She cries every night. The boys are scared. She is scared because of you, I said. Not me. You are trying to turn her against me. No, Ryan. You are doing that yourself. For a second, I thought he might swing at me. His fists clenched, his breathing quickened. Then he stepped back, shaking his head. You want to take the house? Fine, take it. But you will never see those kids again. Ever. He turned and walked out, slamming the door so hard that the picture frames rattled on the wall. I stood there for a long time, the echo of the door fading. Then I picked up the phone and called Bennett's office. His assistant answered. Please tell Mr. Bennett that Ryan Morrison came to my home tonight. He was aggressive but left without incident. Just want it noted. Understood, Mr. Delgado, she said. We will add it to your file. Are you safe now? Yes, I said. But make sure he never shows up here again. After hanging up, I sat down on the couch and let out a slow breath. The confrontation had happened. The mask was slipping. The man who had spent years pretending to be in control was finally showing cracks. I thought about the old saying that sometimes people have to burn their own bridges before they realize they cannot go back. Ryan was almost there. The next morning, I woke to an email from Bennett. It contained a scanned copy of the court's acknowledgement of our filing. The heading read, Cruz vs. Morrison. Property reclamation hearing confirmed. Seeing my name beside his in official type made something settle deep inside me. This was no longer personal spite. It was law. I printed the document and pinned it to my corkboard beside my calendar. May 27th, circled in red. It was only 2 weeks away. I poured a fresh cup of coffee, looked out the window at the rising sun, and felt the calm I had been missing return to me. The confrontation was over. The next battle would be in the courtroom, and I was ready for it. The morning of May 27th came with a heavy stillness that felt almost ceremonial. I had not slept much the night before, not from fear, but from an awareness that this was the day everything would shift. I woke before sunrise, dressed in my navy jacket, and ironed a white shirt so crisp it reminded me of inspection mornings back in my firefighting days. I stood before the mirror for a long moment, straightening my tie, telling myself that this was not about revenge. It was about truth, about boundaries, about finally standing where I should have stood years ago. The courthouse in downtown Tampa was already buzzing when I arrived. The air smelled faintly of coffee and rain. I found attorney Mark Bennett waiting near the front steps, his posture calm, his briefcase neatly in hand. "Morning, Mr. Delgado," he said, offering a reassuring nod. "You ready?" "I am," I said simply. He smiled slightly. "Good. We are on the second floor, courtroom 3. The judge assigned is Honorable Susan Watkins. Fair and direct. She will not be easily swayed by theatrics." Inside the courtroom, the air was cool and still, the kind of quiet that carries tension beneath the surface. Ryan sat across the aisle beside his attorney, a younger man in an expensive gray suit who looked more like a salesman than a lawyer. Laura sat behind them, her hands clasped in her lap, her face pale. When she glanced up and met my eyes, something flickered there. Guilt, maybe, or hope, But she looked away quickly. Bennett and I sat at our table, our documents stacked neatly in front of us. He leaned closer and whispered, "Remember, you do not need to say much. The paperwork will carry this. If the judge asks you anything, answer directly and honestly." When the clerk called our case, everyone rose as the judge entered. She was a woman in her early 60s, gray hair pulled into a bun, glasses perched low on her nose. "Please be seated," she said, her voice clear but kind. "We are here today for Delgado versus Morrison, case number 24-1763, regarding a disputed property claim. Counsel, are you ready to proceed?" Bennett stood. "Yes, Your Honor." The other attorney followed. "Ready, Your Honor." The judge looked between them. "Very well. Mr. Bennett, you may begin." Bennett stepped forward with quiet confidence. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Frank Delgado, entered into a secured loan agreement in 2022 with the defendants, Ryan and Laura Morrison, to provide $74,000 for the payoff of their mortgage. The agreement was properly notarized and filed with the Hillsborough County Clerk, creating a legal lien in my client's name. No payments were ever made toward this loan. My client has since exercised his right to reclaim the property in full accordance with Florida statute. The defense claims the funds were a gift, but the written agreement contradicts that entirely." He handed a stack of documents to the bailiff, who delivered them to the judge. She flipped through the pages slowly, her eyes sharp and deliberate. "Everything appears to be properly filed," she said. "Mr. Morrison, your counsel may respond." Ryan's attorney stood quickly, voice smooth and confident. "Your Honor, the defense maintains that the funds were provided as a familial gift, not a loan. Mr. Morrison and his wife understood the documents to be symbolic, not binding. Furthermore, the plaintiff's current actions appear retaliatory and motivated by personal conflict rather than financial necessity." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Symbolic documents? That is an unusual interpretation of notarized financial contracts." The lawyer hesitated. "Your Honor, my client was under emotional pressure at the time. He did not fully understand what he was signing." Judge Watkins turned her gaze directly to Ryan. "Mr. Morrison, did you read the documents before signing them?" Ryan shifted in his seat. "They were complicated. I trusted my father-in-law. I thought it was just paperwork to finalize the payment." "So you signed a legal document without reading it?" she asked pointedly. He hesitated again, then muttered, "Yes." The judge nodded slowly. "Under Florida law, that does not exempt you from responsibility. A notarized agreement is presumed to be understood by all signers. Ignorance of its terms is not a defense." Bennett remained quiet, watching her with the stillness of someone who had seen this moment coming. The judge turned to him. "Mr. Bennett, the lien is still valid." "Yes, Your Honor," Bennett said. "Filed, recorded, and active." "Then the ownership remains with the plaintiff." She set the documents aside neatly. "Unless the defense can provide evidence of repayment, I see no grounds to dispute the claim." Ryan's attorney tried again. "Your Honor, this will leave my client's family homeless." The judge looked directly at Ryan. "Mr. Morrison, the time to think about that was before you stopped making payments. This court is not in the business of rewarding neglect or deceit. You were given opportunity and responsibility, and you failed to uphold it." Ryan's face flushed red, but he stayed silent. Laura looked down, her shoulders trembling. Judge Watkins continued. "The plaintiff's documentation is comprehensive, and the defense has offered no proof of repayment or misunderstanding beyond unverified statements. Therefore, I rule in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Delgado. The lien stands, and the property is to be returned to his legal possession. The defendants will vacate the premises within 30 days." The words landed like a thunderclap in the still room. Ryan slumped in his chair, his expression frozen between anger and disbelief. His attorney leaned toward him, whispering quickly, but Ryan's hand stayed rigid on the table. Laura covered her mouth, eyes wide with silent tears. Bennett leaned toward me. "Congratulations, Mr. Delgado. You just won your case." I let out a slow breath, the first one that felt free in months. "Thank you," I said. The judge gathered her notes. "Mr. Morrison, I strongly advise you to comply peacefully. Any obstruction of this ruling will be treated as contempt of court." She stood. "This hearing is concluded." The bailiff's voice echoed. "All rise." Everyone stood as the judge exited, her robes flowing behind her like a shadow of finality. When she was gone, Bennett began packing up the documents. Ryan was still sitting, unmoving, his face drained of color. I walked past him without a word, though he muttered something under his breath that I did not bother to catch. Laura reached out slightly as I passed, her voice soft. "Dad." I paused, but did not turn. "Take care of the boys," I said quietly, then walked out. Outside, the sun was brighter than I expected, the heat pressing down in the way only Florida can manage. Bennett joined me on the steps, holding his briefcase at his side. "You handled that perfectly," he said. "The judge saw right through him." "I did not need to say a word," I said. He smiled faintly. Sometimes silence is the loudest argument in the room. As he walked toward his car, I stood there for a while, watching the people passing by, all of them moving through their own private battles. For the first time in years, I felt steady again. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just steady. When I got home that afternoon, I placed the court order beside the original loan file. The papers looked simple, but they represented the return of something far larger than property. They represented my dignity, my line in the sand, and the quiet message that enough was enough. Later that evening, the phone rang again. It was Laura. Her voice was tired, broken. "He is furious," she said softly. "He blames me. He says you destroyed everything." "I did not destroy anything," I said gently. "I just stopped letting him destroy me." There was a pause. Then she said, "I do not know where to go." "Come home," I said. "Bring the boys. The house is big enough. You are always welcome here." She did not answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "Thank you, Dad." When I hung up, the house was quiet again, but it felt different now. Alive, waiting. I poured myself a drink and sat by the window, watching the last light fade over the street. Ryan had lost the house, but what he was about to lose next would cut even deeper. Because once Laura made her choice, he would learn the one truth he had never understood. Family is not something you buy or bargain for. It is something you either protect or lose forever. The days after the hearing felt like the quiet that comes after a hurricane. The sky looks clear, the streets are calm, but you can still feel the air heavy with what just happened. The court's decision was final, and Ryan knew it. Within hours of the ruling, his attorney filed a motion to delay the eviction, but it was denied almost immediately. 30 days meant 30 days. The countdown had begun. Laura called again the next morning. Her voice was raw from crying, but steadier than before. "He will not talk to me," she said. "He just keeps saying none of this is fair, that you tricked him. He barely looks at the boys." I closed my eyes and said quietly, "Sweetheart, sometimes when a person's world starts to crumble, they blame the only one who never lied to them. You cannot fix him." "I do not know what to do," she whispered. "Focus on Ethan and Ben," I told her. Keep things normal for them. They do not need to see his anger. There was a pause before she said, "He is not sleeping. He keeps pacing the house. I think he is scared, but he will never admit it." "That is how it starts," I said softly. "The act stops working, and all that is left is fear." Over the next 2 weeks, I kept my distance, even though every instinct told me to check on her. Bennett had warned me to avoid direct contact until the eviction was complete. "Let the law handle it," he had said. Any personal confrontation could complicate things. So I waited, watching from the sidelines while the situation unraveled exactly as I knew it would. Laura tried to apply for new housing, but the applications kept getting rejected. Ryan's credit report was a disaster. Between unpaid loans, maxed-out cards, and the new court judgment, his financial record looked like a wreck. Every bank, every property manager, every apartment office told them the same thing. "We cannot approve your application at this time." When Laura told me about the rejections, her voice broke. "The boys keep asking when they can see their new room. I do not have the heart to tell them we have nowhere to go yet." "Then do not tell them that," I said. "Tell them everything is being worked out. Tell them their grandfather is making sure everything will be okay. Because I am." By the 3rd week, Ryan's frustration had turned into something darker. According to Laura, he had started drinking again, coming home late, snapping at the kids over small things. The last time she called, I could hear the exhaustion in her tone. He is angry all the time now. He blames everyone. Yesterday, he said it would have been better if you had never helped us at all. I let her words sink in before answering. That is how he survives. If he admits he failed, the whole image he built collapses. Let him be angry, Laura. Let him burn through it. She was silent for a long moment, then said, "The boys deserve better than this." "They do," I said. "And you have the power to give it to them. You just have to decide when enough is enough." 3 days before the eviction date, Bennett called me. "Mr. Delgado, I received a message from the sheriff's office this morning. The enforcement is scheduled for Friday at 9 a.m. The family will be given 2 hours to vacate. After that, the deputies will secure the property." I nodded slowly, though he could not see it. "I understand." I also received word that the defendant's attorney tried to reopen the case, but the judge refused to hear it. "This is final, Frank. It is over." It was not over. Not yet. The paperwork would end one part of it, but the emotional wreckage still had to settle. On the morning of the eviction, I did not drive to Maple Ridge Drive. I stayed home, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, waiting for the phone call that would confirm what I already knew. It came at 11:15. Bennett's voice was steady but respectful. "It is done. Deputies were on site. The defendants were cooperative. The house is now officially in your possession." I let out a long breath. "Thank you." He hesitated before adding, "Laura and the boys left with him, but from what I heard, there was tension. She looked ready to break." "Then she will call," I said quietly. "When she is ready, she will call." That call came 3 days later. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of humid Florida day where even the air feels tired. My phone rang while I was working in the garage. I wiped my hands on a rag and answered. "Dad," she said. Her voice was trembling. But this time it was not from fear, it was from relief. "I cannot do this anymore. I cannot watch him spiral and pretend we are fine. I do not even recognize him. The boys are scared. I need to get them out of here." "Then come home," I said immediately. "You do not need to ask. You never did. Pack what you can and bring the boys. The rest can wait." She was crying now, softly but uncontrollably. I do not even know what to bring. Bring their clothes, their school things, and their favorite toys, I said. Everything else is replaceable. You and the boys are not. She whispered, "Thank you, Dad," before hanging up. An hour later, I saw her car pull into my driveway. The boys jumped out first, running straight to me. Ben threw his arms around my waist while Ethan clung to my side, talking all at once about how much they missed me. Behind them, Laura stepped out slowly, her eyes red but her posture straighter than it had been in months. She looked around the front yard and said quietly, "I forgot how peaceful it is here." "It always has been," I said. "You just stopped seeing it." That night, the house was alive again. The boys sat at the kitchen table eating spaghetti, laughing at old family stories. Laura helped me clear the dishes afterward, moving slower than usual, but her hands did not shake anymore. When the boys were asleep, we sat in the living room in silence for a while before she finally spoke. "He will never forgive you," she said. "I do not need his forgiveness," I replied. "I only need your freedom." She nodded slowly. "He spent the weekend saying it was all your fault, that you stole his future." "He stole his own future," I said evenly. "All I did was hand him the bill." She gave a faint, tired smile. "I think he knows that, even if he will never admit it." 2 weeks passed before I heard from Ryan again, though technically it was not him. It was his new lawyer. A debt collection notice had been served. Bennett had already warned me that we were filing for the additional $13,500 in unpaid loans. When I asked him if it was necessary, he said simply, "Yes. If we do not, he will think he escaped accountability. It is time for him to learn there are consequences for every dollar he took." The lawsuit hit him like a second wave. Laura told me later that when Ryan opened the envelope, he went silent for a full minute, then exploded, shouting, throwing the papers across the room, and blaming everyone except himself. But something changed that night. She saw him clearly for the first time, without excuses or charm. His anger no longer scared her, it disgusted her. She called me that same night after he had left the house. "Dad," she said, her voice calm now, "I am filing for separation." For a long moment, I did not speak. Then I said, "Do you want me to go with you when you file?" "No," she said softly. "I need to do this myself. But I want you to know that I am not scared anymore." I closed my eyes and smiled. That is all I ever wanted to hear. The following week, I got a call from Bennett again. "The debt recovery case is settled," he said. "Ryan's attorney offered a payment plan, $400 a month for 34 months. We can push for a lump sum, but my advice is to accept. It keeps him accountable without destroying whatever chance your daughter has to rebuild quietly." "Then we accept?" I said. When I hung up, I looked across the living room at Ethan and Ben, building a fort out of couch cushions, their laughter echoing through the house. Laura was standing in the doorway watching them, her arms folded, her face peaceful for the first time in a long while. The fallout was over. The lies, the debt, the manipulation, all of it had burned out. What was left was small, simple, and real. The boys, my daughter, the quiet hum of a house that finally felt like home again. I leaned back in my chair and thought about the envelope that started everything. How one man's greed had turned it into a weapon, and how, in the end, that same greed had destroyed him. The law had done its work, slow but exact. Ryan lost his house, his control, and eventually, his family. But me, I got my grandsons back. And sometimes, justice really is that simple. The weeks that followed were quiet in the way life should be. The house no longer echoed with silence, but with laughter. Every Saturday morning, Ethan and Ben would burst through the kitchen, dragging fishing rods and snack bags, arguing about who caught the bigger bass last time. Laura would sip her coffee at the counter, smiling, her shoulders no longer weighed down by fear. One morning, she looked up and said, "Do you ever regret it? Taking the house back?" I thought for a moment before answering. No, because it was never about the house. It was about teaching a lesson that love and respect cannot be bought. He learned that the hard way. She nodded slowly. "He called me last night," she said. "Said he is moving to Miami to start over. He asked if I would go with him." I set my cup down. "What did you say?" "That the boys and I already have a home," she said quietly. "And this time, it is one built on peace, not debt." We sat in silence for a while after that, listening to the sound of Ben laughing outside as Ethan tried to show him how to cast properly. The late morning light streamed through the window, catching dust in golden lines. It looked like hope. By mid-July, Laura had finalized the separation. She signed the papers on a Thursday, handed them to her lawyer, and came home with tears in her eyes. "It is strange," she said. "After everything, I thought I would feel broken. But I just feel free." "Freedom always feels strange at first," I told her. When the court approved my permanent visitation order a few weeks later, I drove to the lake with the boys to celebrate. The air smelled like summer, the water shimmered, and their laughter carried across the dock. Watching them reel in their lines, I realized this was what every sleepless night and every court hearing had been for. Justice was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming the right to love my family without conditions. That evening, as we drove home, Ben fell asleep with his head against the window, and Ethan whispered, "Grandpa, are we going to fish every Saturday forever?" I smiled and said, "Every Saturday, buddy, rain or shine." He nodded once, eyes heavy, and whispered, "Good." By the time we reached home, the sky had turned soft and purple. Laura stood on the porch waiting for us, her smile calm and proud. For the first time in years, everything felt right. Some battles end with noise, others end with peace. Mine ended with 2 sleeping boys in the back seat and the sound of waves still echoing in my mind. That was enough.